Today, in the last 2 days, I've had to take the role of being facilitator and rapporteur in one of the panel discussions. This particular parallel session was on tenure reform, very, very specifically on rural tenure. We were quite privileged to be able to go into that parallel session after in his paper is this point that says, as South Africa looks into this very important issue of rural tenure, more very specifically tenure that relates to communities on communal land, we need to disabuse our mind systems into traditional communities. This idea of freehold tenure, which works perfectly in an urban setting, does not always work well in rural communities. Rural communities or communal communities have their own systems of how they manage their lives, of how they relate, of how they set up rules of land allocation, of land use, and how to ensure that they use the land productively given the opportunity. So in essence, what he's saying is this: we should not be imposing freehold title on communities because it suits, for example, financial institutions. Instead, what we should be doing is should be saying, how do we ensure that with rural communities, with communities living on communal land, how do we develop appropriate financial products and services that will unlock value for those communities? We should not be asking the communities to change their tenure systems to suit the financial institutions. It should be the other way around. How do we think out of the box and be innovative and saying how can they derive value from their access and use rights on communal land? That's one of the points. Another very important point is that we need to ensure that there is not this hierarchy of rights and protection for people living on communal land and for people who happen to live in urban land. We should ensure that the tenure rights of communities enjoy the same level of protection. And this point was thoroughly emphasized in our parallel session and in our report back session this morning, to say we need to ensure that we have a uniform system of protecting tenure rights, of recognizing tenure rights, and ensuring that they also appear in the deeds office. Because at the moment, rural communities' tenure rights are not registered anywhere, or they appear in different areas. For example, you might have to go to the Department of COGTA, of Corporate Governance and Traditional Affairs, to check, what is the status of permissions to occupy, otherwise known as PTOs. You may have to go to a local chief to check the status of this, and even then, there is no uniformity in terms of which how these PTOs are managed, what is the content of the PTO, what is the level of enforceability of the PTO amongst the community and outside of the community. So this is a very important point that came from our parallel session, to ensure that we have equal protection, equal recognition of all tenure rights, and that they are also recognized and registered into our formal deeds registry system, or whatever system that we're going to have. And finally, another very important point that they made is that we need to ensure that there's a uniform system of land administration in South Africa, because currently we do not have that. The issue of administering land sits in many different places and is not properly coordinated. And we need to therefore ensure that we have an agency of government. And it was said that this does not have to be the Department of Rural Development and Land Reform. It could be a separate one that ensures that all land parcels in South Africa, across the board, we have a uniform system of knowing where is this land, where is it located, what other rights are relevant to this land, whether it's water rights, what servitudes are registered over the land, what usufructory rights relate to this land. And this information needs to be located in a central place. Some call it a land observatory, and we need to have this portal that if you want information on any particular piece of land, there should be a central point where the information is recorded, it's accessible to all members of the public, and it is possible, therefore, to be making decisions either as a seller, as a buyer, as the state in terms of what you want to do, whether it's matters of planning, of spatial planning, or whether it's matters of financial and economic development related to these pieces of land. This was another point, and this came across several of that parallel sessions, it became one of the important points that cut across to say we need to sort out our land administration, but we also need to ensure that we have the observatory and a portal where all information about land is available, is accessible in a way that works for all of us. Those, I think, are the most important points that came out from our parallel session. Thank you very much. And it was a great, I think the last 2 days were really informative. The sessions are still continuing. As we are speaking, there are still more presentations taking place. We currently have a presentation from the Department of Rural Development and Land Affairs, from the Land Claims Commission and others. And basically it's just to say, the president sitting where he is, how can we ensure there's coordination, that we get this issue of land, properly coordinated, that we think across the board, we work away from silos of different departments doing different things, and ensuring that we have a clear approach to land in South Africa. This is what these 2 days are really about. Thank you.